Hey, and welcome to today's episode of Bible 365 with Kathy Carter. So today is day 84, and we are going through Joshua. So right now we are Joshua 7 through 9. And this is actually not a book that I've been in very often. And so this is one like I need a little more of my notes to kind of get the full picture of everything that's going on, because I've done and really enjoyed Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And this is kind of stepping into a direction which I've read on a few occasions, but I've never really dove into too much. So if you see me looking at my notes a lot more, it's because I'm not as naturally familiar with this story as I am with other things. And then actually it also leads me to not necessarily a ton of things sort of like pop up or stand out, because I'm really just getting the concept of the story and what's happening. So if you have never been with me before, today is again, today is day 84, and this is the 84th day in reading our Bible. I'm reading through the Bible chronologically for 365 days. And so we're going from start to finish. We're doing it chronologically because I think knowing it and understanding it a little bit more historically, I feel like puts the picture together better. And I feel like it takes a lot of our natural questions and answers a lot of those. So it's going to answer, I believe, a lot of questions you're going to have on why we would even follow Jesus. Like, why is he the guy, right? And so going all the way back to the beginning to help understand why he's the guy, I feel like, sorry, I have this crazy hair. Why he's the guy is the most important thing. And I feel like that's going to help us, one, for us as followers. So for those of us who do follow Jesus, this really just strengthens our foundation in our faith. And for those of you who do not believe, who have a lot of questions, or who are really cynical, right? Like, so it's not just questions. Like, there's a lot of you out there that are really cynical in nature. I have always been that person. I didn't become a believer until I was in my 30s. And so I was extremely cynical about the entire thing. I remember watching movies about Moses and movies about Noah, and I just thought they were the most absurd things. And I remember thinking, you can explain all of this away with someone just being a really good leader, right? So really good leaders and really good followers. So I'm hoping that this will help with a lot of those things. But the truth of the matter is it's a commitment. So it's putting in the time, it's putting in the effort, it's really trying to understand, instead of just putting a wall in front of you and saying what I have is enough. Because I'm gonna tell you, I am someone who's read through the Bible several times. I have studied a lot of the books of the Bible in being both a follower as a Bible study participant and a leader in things. And it's never enough. You're never at the end. You've never gotten to the bottom of the well, so to speak. There's always something new to learn, another way to grow, things to remember, and things to enhance what you already do, and the way that you act as a community believer, as a follower of Christ among people. So all of that being said, today we are in the book of Joshua. We're sort of still in the beginning of the book of Joshua. If this is your first time, going back, excuse me, a couple of days is great. Going all the way back to Moses in Exodus is preferable. Going all the way back to Genesis obviously is essential. It's the best way. I would love if you did that first. But if you just want to listen and see if this is for you, that's great too. So glad you're with me. I'm excited to share this journey with anyone and everyone. So Joshua is the predecessor of Moses. So he is the person who comes after Moses, sort of passes his power. If you remember last time, or maybe a couple of times ago, Moses laid his hands on Joshua and gave him the power of leadership of the Israelites. Israelites are the people group that were saved by Moses through God, or by God through Moses. Let me put it that way. They were the people that were saved in Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt for several hundred years. So they lived as a people group in the 12 tribes of I wanted to say Judah, that's not it. And the 12 tribes of Jacob, who was renamed Israel. So that's why they're called the Israelites, because they're 12 tribes of Israel. And they lived in Egypt for several hundred years. So several generations, were living in Egypt. And so Moses pulled them out of there. And now they are, as a people group, moving into the land of Canaan. Last we were together, Joshua took 40,000 men with him, and they walked around the walls of Jericho several times, right? Once a day, every day for 6 days. And then on the last day, they did it 7 times, blew the trumpets, and all the walls came down. And then they went in and they essentially ransacked Jericho. So Jericho is a city in the entire state of Israel. And so they ransacked the entire place. They killed anyone in there that wasn't Rahab and her family. And they took all of the plunder and they brought it inside town and they burned everything. And then they were told that this would kind of be burned forever and no one is supposed to bring it up. So then this is how we begin the next chapter. So this is how we begin today, which starting in chapter 7. Chapter 7:1 says, "But the Israelites were unfaithful in regard to the devoted things." I'm going to say Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, the son of Zerah of the tribe of Judah, took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. And then it repeats that same thing in First Chronicles 2. And so this person, when they were going to war, this person took something that they weren't supposed to. It was the devoted things. These things were devoted to be burned and sacrificed. So again, this is this whole system of something needs to pay the price, right? There's just a reality, and I know it's a reality we don't want. It's a reality we still live in. Something and someone needs to pay the price for wrongdoing. We're trying to live in this world now where there is no punishment for wrongdoing. We're making it like we're trying to just maybe if we're just nicer, like we're trying to create this utopian society that if everyone were just nice to everybody else, then there would be no wrongdoing, right? Because everyone would be so happy because everybody was so nice, there would be no wrongdoing. And that's just unfortunately a really unrealistic view of the world. And I would love if you have that view of the world, if you're just hoping and waiting for utopia, right? And you're just thinking, if only we put all of our weapons away, if only we dropped our fists, if only we said nice words all the time, you do nice, nice comes back to you. If only that were the world, right? Then if only that were everybody else, right? Then we could all live in harmony with each other. And I just ask, even, and I don't mean this as a trite statement, I just ask if you have that view and if you believe that that's just the way that the world could possibly work and that we wouldn't need to sacrifice anything, there wouldn't need to be punishments, there wouldn't need to be justice. I just ask for one day, just like one day, go out and try and be that perfect person to other people and see how that response is. Is it easy to be that perfect person? And of course, I'm going to say it's impossible. And then when you are that perfect person, do you get that good back? Right? And if you feel like absolutely I can do that for 24 hours and it worked out perfect for me, do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then see how. Just to do it as an experiment, just to see, like, is there a possibility that if I just consistently do really, really nice things, and really, really nice things will come back to me? And I don't mean that to be snarky or trite or anything like that. I think that we have this crazy worldview now, and we forget that sin is in the world, and we cannot turn our eyes away from it. We cannot be blind to it, and we cannot just be hopeful that it will go away. God, I believe, shows us that is not true. That when way back in the garden, when man sinned, when Adam and Eve both took and ate the forbidden fruit, there was a breaking in the world. And it's not just people, it's people and it's the world. And there's a brokenness to it that only Jesus and his coming back can fix. And then we will all be then we will be in a utopia after that. Jesus will have us living in a place that is perfect and that is loving. And there is no tears. However, that's not where we are. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there. That was a not notes, unexpected tangent, but just to think about that. So in this, there is punishment because this guy. So my first punishment was that everything needed to be burned, right? So everyone in Israel needed to know that the Israelites were coming in. The Israelites come in. They sacrificed Jericho. Right? This is a big area. It's like a hub kind of area. And they sacrifice Jericho, all the people, all the plunder, all those kind of things. And then fear goes out around and among everybody else. They're scared. So, but then we find out that somebody did not do what they were supposed to do. They were told very specifically what to do when they went in there, and they did not. So this guy in the tribe of Judah did this. He took some things. So moving on to Joshua 7:2. I know I'm only a couple of verses in. Goodness. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven, to the east of Bethel, and told them, go up and spy out the region. So they're moving on to another place. So remember, they're getting the entire state of Israel. I don't know why I do it this way. I feel like it's more this way. They're getting the entire, what we would now consider the state of Israel. He gave the dimensions yesterday. And right now they've only taken a small little tiny location. I believe it's right above the Red Sea. They've taken this small location. So they're going to start spreading out. And so Joshua's like, okay, this area we got. Now I want you to go on a lookout and look into the next place. And so they do. They go check that place out. But if I move on to, I move down a little bit, when they came back, they were super excited. They were like, this land is not so bad. Only a couple thousand people are in this land. There's not that many people in this land. Sorry. He says, we can take this easy. So it's no big deal. Only send us with a couple of thousand people is what he said. So it says not all the army is going to have to go, just a little bit, because there's not that many people who live there. But they started going out, and when they started going out, men from Ai actually met them on the road, and they killed them. And they killed, I think it says 36 people they killed. And so now the Israelites are kind of freaking out a little bit, because God is supposed to be in front of them. They're supposed to be doing all this with God's blessing, and they're supposed to be taking the land. So now the Israelites are afraid, because they went out and they were supposed to conquer everything. So they're kind of wondering what's happening and what's going on, and fear kind of goes all over the place. So moving on to verse 6, it says, Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark. Remember, the ark is where God is, and sprinkled dust on their heads. So it was Joshua, and then the elders of Israel did the same. And then God's like, hey, why are you doing that? I want you guys to stand up. And he said, this is what happened. What happened is, he says, stand up. What are you doing down on your face? Israel has sinned. They violated my commandments. So God obviously knows that somebody did what they did. And so he tells them, this is what we're going to do. He's putting a miraculous plan in play, because that's what God does. He's like, we're going to start bringing people out. We're going to bring them out tribe by tribe. Once I pick the tribe, we're going to bring them out clan by clan inside the tribe. Once we figure out what clan it is, we're going to bring them out family by family, and they're going to start to figure this out. If you guys remember, one of the ways that they make decisions is by lot. So I believe it's Urim, and Thummim. I screw up those names every single time. And so that's how they figures out, right? So they throw the lot, they ask who it is, they throw the dice, and whatever it comes up as, they start to come out, and they start to recognize who it is. So it says, in the morning, present yourselves tribe by tribe, and the tribe of the Lord chooses. The tribe the Lord chooses shall come forward. And so the next day that they do this, they wake up early the next morning, verse 16. Early the next morning, Joshua had Israel come forward by tribes, and then Judah was chosen. And so again, boom, 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 they go all the way down until they find the guy who did this. And this is a grown man who did this with a family. And the guy confessed that he did it. So he said, yes. And these are the points that I saw. And it's in verse 21. So this is one of the 10 commandments. This is one of the sins. He says, when I saw the plunder, a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. So if you remember, this is kind of what Eve did as well. Eve saw it first, and it looked good to her. You guys remember this? Human nature does not change all that much. So saw it. And this is, by the way, I want to note that this is a different author. So we probably can assume that Moses was the original author of the book of Genesis, right? Now we're in Joshua. Moses has died. So there's no chance that Moses is the author of this book, right? Time has passed, and somebody is writing this book, whether it's Joshua or whether it's somebody else writing this book that was sort of like in his camp and knew who he was, and sort of followed him along as the historian, right? There would be a historian in that time. So would be writing these things down, but it is not the same one all the way back. So to find those little threads in there, I think is super fascinating, because we can see that some of the truth, right? Like that's why I was saying in the beginning, like the world is the world. And I think we're foolish when we refuse to recognize the truth that is right there in front of us. We can see it with our eyes. We can feel it. and we can read it in the Bible. So it's not just that it's even one place, right? Like, oh, I can tell that it's like this, but that could be your emotions, right? Or I just look in this book and I know it's like this, but I don't have any opinion because I don't live in the outside world. We have more than just one way to recognize truth. So anyway, he says, I saw it, I coveted it, so I looked at it and I needed to have it, right? And we're not supposed to covet, we're not supposed to covet any of our neighbors' things. And then he took it. So it started way back in the seeing. So remembering when you think that you want to take something or you look at something and say, I want that, I need that, it has to be mine. It's because you looked at it and you looked at it a little bit with envy. So wanting to go back to sort of remember that once you start looking on something with envy, the urge to take something that's not yours is right up there, or to do something to get that when you don't necessarily need it, deserve it, or should have it, right? It's not necessarily given to you by God. So once they figured out he did it, they actually brought him and his entire family and all of his livestock and everything out, and they stoned all of them to death. So this was the punishment for doing what the Lord told them not to do. This was a pretty big crime in God's eyes, and so God told them to stone him to death. And then the Lord's wrath turned from them. So once they had that person and family pay the punishment, the Lord turned away, and now he was back with them. And then he's going to be with them when they go back to Ai. So they're going to start talking about Ai again. So let's move on to chapter 8. So now, with God's help, they have been approved to go into Ai. So it says in chapter 8, verse 1, Then the Lord said to Joshua, Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into the hand of, let me do this again. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land, and you shall do to him what you did to Jericho. But instead of fully, completely, so they're going to kill all the men, women, and children, but they are going to keep all the plunder. So they have been allowed to keep the plunder this time around, but they still have to do the same thing, and they still have to burn the city. So I want to go to, they take 30,000 people with them. And so I want to go to verse 18. So early in the morning, he goes out, the entire force goes out with him. So they were setting up, they were with God's help, because God told them what to do. They set up a trap. And so they said, just like we went in last time, we're going to go in. So we're going to just take this like small portion of the army. We're going to go in. They're going to think that we came back with just a small portion of the army again. They're going to chase us because they're going to think we're going to run again. And then we are going to run, and we're going to run all the way back. And then once we run all the way back, you guys are going to ambush them, and you're going to ambush them from one side. And then we're going to kind of take him in from the other side. And then so we're going to come to victory in that way. So that's exactly what they did. They kind of ran and did that whole thing. And then moving to verse 18, it said, The Lord said to Joshua, Hold out toward Ai the javelin that is in your hand, for into your hand I will deliver the city. So Joshua held out the javelin. And then as soon as he did this, the men in the ambush rose quickly and rushed forward. So I'm bringing this up because I'm going to bring it up actually a couple of times. It's brought up twice that he has this javelin. And Moses had a staff, if you guys remember. So Moses had a staff, and with his staff, he did all these miracles. And Joshua now has a javelin, and with a javelin, he's doing all his miracles. And so what I find fascinating with this is that it looks like, so if you guys remember, Moses died before they went to war with this land and took the land from them. Now, I'm not saying they didn't go to war with any other countries before that, because they did, and we see that God gave them all this land. But it looks like that Moses's support, right, the way he was with God, was through his staff, right? It was a walking stick, right? A staff is to help you, guide you on your way, right? And Joshua's is a javelin. So this is a weapon. And so just looking at the differences between the two leaders, right? That Joshua is kind of going in and attacking and taking land from people. And Moses, really, that wasn't Moses's position. Moses' position was to lead them and to remember, he guided them in all the rules and all the ways to sort of establish a community. So there is a difference, and God specifically has this difference for them. This is the way he has chosen his people, right? So he chose Joshua to be the next leader. And so Joshua is just a different kind of leader because they have a different kind of thing that's happening right now. They're going in and taking land to establish forever, right? The point is they're supposed to get this land and they're supposed to have this land forever. All right. So I want to move on to verse 23. It says, but they took the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. And then it says, when Israel had finished killing all the men of Ai in the field and the wilderness where they chased them, when every one of them had been put to the sword, all the Israelites returned to Ai and killed those who were in it. So again, it's not just killing the warriors, it's killing everybody in it. And it says 12,000 men and women fell that day, all the people of Ai, for Joshua did not draw back. And then it says, Joshua burned Ai and made a permanent heap of the ruins, a desolate place to this day. And then he impales the body of the king. So I thought they were going to save the king, but it looks like they did not. He impales the body of the king for everyone to see, which is unpleasant to say the very least. And so everyone sees it. And then it says they raised a large rock pile over his dead body. So then we move on to 30. And 30, it says, Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the Lord, which we have seen time. If you've been with me, you've seen time and time and time and time again. All these people back in Genesis consistently build all these altars to the Lord. And each one of them seems to get maybe a little bit bigger. And in this one, he builds an altar to the Lord, and he builds it with uncut stones. So there's very certain things that God wants, right? Like an untouched, more of a holy stone. So an uncut stone that comes to him. And then on some stones, not these, but some different stones, he rewrites the law of Moses. And so this is an altar now with the law of Moses, which people can see. So everyone's going to know that God is there. Everyone's going to recognize. And then these are going to be things that they can read. So they're going to be familiar with these things, right? God doesn't give these things to keep them in secret. He wants everybody to know. It's always supposed to be about, sorry, I know I just shook this a little bit. It's always supposed to be about seeing God. God does not make himself a secret to any of us. And so all of these things that they do, it's to show who God is, show the power of who God is, tell the people, so they're supposed to be following this God, right? Remember that I'm the God that does all of these things. So confirming with the Israelites that he is this God. And so I don't ever want you guys to mistake some of the reasons that they do what they do. It is always to point to God, always to show who God is and the power of who God is. All right. And then moving down to verse 34, it said afterwards, so after he built this altar, Joshua read, and he wrote the words of the law down. He read all the words of the laws, the law, the blessings and the curses, just as it is written in the book of the law. There was not a word in all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read to the whole assembly of Israel, including the women and children, the foreigners who lived among them. So reminder, when we hear all these things that, it's been converted, it's been forgotten, it's been changed, it's been, right, it's word of mouth, it's the telephone game. That's not what it's saying here. It is stating, and I know we could probably always say, well, they think that it's the same. I think it's trying to be clear that there's a purpose for it, that they're trying not to destroy God's word. They're trying not to twist God's word, because they know that God is before them and he is leading them in this battle and giving them this land. So if we move on to chapter 9, now coming to the end here, it says, now when the kings of the west of the Jordan had heard about these things, they came together to wage war. So finally they kind of are getting smart, and they're coming together to wage war against Joshua and all the Israelites. However, the Gibeonites do not do that. The Gibeonites, they kind of make a backhanded deal. So they are people that they're not supposed to be making a deal with, but the Israelites don't know that yet. So they come and they try and make a deal with the Israelites. And basically they're like, how do we know that you're not, close to us? How do we know that you're people that we're supposed to be making a deal with? Now, what they should be doing is they should be consulting God, just like we should be doing all the time. Our answers come from the Lord, right? And so what they should be doing is consulting God. They didn't. They took what they said sort of verbatim. They said, if you remember, they took all old bread and moldy food and stuff like that, dried out wineskins, and they brought that with them to convince them that they came from really far away. So we drove from a really far away land. And of course you can tell, because by the time we got here, look at all of our food. It's terrible. It's dried out. It's moldy. It's gross. Our wineskins are empty. And so they saw that, and they were convinced by that. They were convinced that these people were true to their word. And so they made a deal with the Gibeonites, and they were not supposed to. So they couldn't go back on their deal because they needed to be people of their word. So instead of going back on their deal and dishonoring God, instead they made these Gibeonites, when they found out who they were, they made the Gibeonites woodcutters and water carriers. And so, of course, hearing that they are woodcutters, which means they weren't woodcutters and water carriers, essentially means that they're not in full unity, right, with the Israelite people. They're sort of like a level below them, right? So they're the woodcutters and the water carriers, and so they're sort of a level below them. And so, of course, in the future, spoiler alert, we know someone who's a woodcutter. Is it a different kind of woodcutter? Maybe. But I just thought that that was a nice little extra, that these people were a little bit underneath, were not the top of the rung, but they were in a commitment with Israel, or Israel did make a promise to them that they would not kill them. So that's where I'm ending it today. And I'm hoping this was a blessing to you. If it was, if this helped you in your reading at all, if it really started, delivered it, or maybe brought it to life in any way, shape, or form, I want you to like this video. So hit the like button, share it with people, and subscribe to the channel so you can continue to get these every day as I put them on. And I'll see you guys next time. Keep reading.